What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video we'll be taking another look at my collection. Today I'll be showing my Douglas DC-10 fleet. As you can tell, my DC-10 fleet is not that big, but it has quite a bit of rare gems to it as a result. So the DC-10 is a very popular aircraft in 400 scale, and the types that get made usually sell out pretty quickly, and once they're on the secondhand market, you can expect them to be around the three-figure range. So about $100 you'll might be seeing prices for on some examples, especially like notable U.S. carriers like Continental or Western or Delta, just to name a few. American's also another notable operator here in the U.S. for the DC-10, and they had them for a number of years. Sometime around like 1972, I want to say, or 71, to about 2000 is when they operated those. And I'd love to get one because they are quite rare. We'll go ahead and get started with some of my first DC-10s. I don't have them sorted in any order here. I just have them laid out in however I found them off my shelves. Well, I'll start off with this FedEx Express. This is an MD-10. Now, the difference between a DC-10 and an MD-10 is that there's some internal upgrades to like the avionics and all that, and it also removes that third flight engineer position in the cockpit. So you only need two people now to fly this as opposed to what the DC-10 originally had. So FedEx upgraded pretty much all the DC-10s that they had in like the 2010s or so, maybe even before that, but they upgraded a majority, if not all, of their DC-10s they had to the MD-10 configuration, and they retired these just a few years ago. Very sad I never got to spot one of these up close, because these were quite the workhorses in the freighter era for FedEx, and now they're phasing out the MD-11s at some point, and I just read that they've actually grounded all of them because of the unfortunate UPS crash that occurred in Louisville last week. So, you know, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected, especially to the loved ones of the crew that were on board that flight. You just hate to see an aircraft go down like that for any reason, and especially for anyone else that was involved to be, you know, involved in that. So, you know, again, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody involved in that tragic crash in Louisville. So, as we continue, we move on to some passenger examples. This is the, my second Gemini, the only other Gemini DC-10 that I have. Everything else is different brands. But this is a Sun Country example. And they had these for quite a few years back in their original era. And these operated a lot more of like the high demand routes, if I remember right. But they had a really nice livery with the orange and red hues on this DC-10. And yeah, Gemini made this like 25 years ago, and the registration that's on this aircraft is actually now on a United Express Embraer 175, which I thought that was pretty interesting. November 154 Sierra Yankee. So I'm sure if you try to Google that, you might get results for this aircraft alongside the E175 there. But Sun Country ultimately got rid of these, and they actually filed for bankruptcy in 2001. And then they emerged out of bankruptcy as the current Sun Country that we know today, with all the 737s, primarily the 800, but they have some 900s now. I think, yeah, they just got their second 739 recently. So hopefully I'll get a chance to spot that, since that is pretty cool to see for Sun Country. Moving on, we have a very rare example in my fleet. This is a Delta DC-10. Now, this is the 2024 release, or not 2024, sorry, 2025. This is released earlier in the year by Aeroclassics. Now, I know that they did do another release of this many years ago, and I think Aurora Models was the other brand that made one of the Delta DC-10s. And these things are just super rare. I think they're more rare than the L1011s, that Loch Ness Models, which is one of Aeroclassics' sub-brands, and then Gemini made a couple releases way back in their early days. So with the DC-10, I mean, these things are super rare for Delta. So when this popped up in, I think it was a March batch, I thought about getting it, and because I knew that I was going to want one of these at some point, so I figured I might as well get it, because this is a new release. This is an easy opportunity for me to get it at retail price So I jumped on it, and I ultimately unboxed it the same day I got my first white whale, Frontier 737-200 by Seattle Model Aircraft. That was quite the fun unboxing because I was not planning on unboxing them on the same day, but USPS ultimately delayed my package. And then there was a cold snap that came through, so I got stuck at home a couple days. I missed some class time because I was not going to drive back up to college, and I forget how low the wind chills went, but I think they were probably 20, 30, maybe even 40 below zero. I mean, that's dangerous to drive into, especially out in open country. So you just have to be careful up here in the cold, and we just got our first snow as well, so the roads are going to be messy too. On the second row, I have a Dragon Wings DC-10. I actually got two of them here, but this first one is a United example with the Friendship livery. This is the same livery that's on the A320 as that retro, the Stars and Bars livery is what some people like to call it, including me. But this is the Friendship variant that they had. There's actually an earlier livery that the DC-10s had right as United took delivery of them, but this Friendship one's a little more common in terms of, if you look it up and you see photos of it, this is probably the livery you'll most likely see from the 1970s. But I must say, this is a very classy livery for the United DC-10. I think it fits very, very well with this aircraft type. And this is actually the first DC-10 that got delivered to United, so Dragon picked a really nice subject matter. And I got this one off of Squatchy's table at Airliners International in Atlanta. I forget the price right off the top of my head, but it was a pretty good deal, so I decided why not. And then this DC-10 I also got from a collectible show, my only regional collectible show that I've attended to date, the 2023 MSP Airline Collectible Show in Minneapolis. This Federal Express example. So this is the original branding for FedEx, as some of you may know, and they actually have the FedEx branding on the tail, so they were already playing into that name well before they officially made it their branding. I think it was 1994 or something, they officially rebranded to FedEx and introduced the current white livery with the purple tail. But this purple plane is definitely my more preferred livery, and I kind of wish they'd bring it back as a retro. They are already past 50 years of operation, so they definitely could benefit from having a heritage aircraft somewhere in their fleet. Maybe like a 777 or maybe a 76 would probably work. 75 would be interesting to see this livery on, but I don't know. It's definitely... I remember hearing a rumor about a retro livery being painted for FedEx, but that never materialized, so that's usually what happens with rumors. But anyway, as for this particular model, I got it at that MSP collectible show, and it was only $35 from a private vendor. I just saw it on the table, and I thought it was interesting, so why not? And I've got a really nice retro model for the collection. And then the last one, and one of the latest acquisitions, also acquired at the same time as the United example right up there, is this Continental DC-10. This I got off the Bushare USA table at Airliners in Atlanta, and this was retail price as well. And I was surprised that there was even one still left in stock, because I mean, these things, it sold out when I was recording my release video for this, because this was in, I want to say, the November 2024 batch. It sold out right as I was wrapping up my recording, so I didn't think I was going to get my hands on this, but ultimately, Bushare still had a couple that they were able to bring with to Atlanta, and I decided to snag it, and I've got this really nice Continental example. Definitely want to get the meatball livery, because that one's more iconic for Continental Airlines and all that, but this Globe livery definitely is really nice. I do like how they put the Globe logo on the top of the tail above the engine, and they don't necessarily extend it down towards the fuselage, since that tail engine is sort of right in the middle there. But yeah, the DC-10 is a very nice looking aircraft. Definitely a fitting type for many carriers back in the days when trijets were sort of the way to go, especially if you didn't want to operate a quadjet across the ocean, and obviously twin jets couldn't do it because there wasn't really a lot of trust back in those days that a twin-engine jet could safely operate over the ocean, especially if you had an engine failure. You could only do like a 30 or 60 minute more flight time over the ocean before you would end up either ditching or having to land somewhere along the coastline of a country. So obviously that has changed, and now pretty much the only thing you'll fly on these days is a twin jet. You still have some A340s or you know, a 748 might still be flying. Even a couple 744s are left for Lufthansa, but those are going to be gone in a couple years. And I would have loved to fly on one, but I just don't think that's going to happen before their retirement, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's been nice at least spotting some quad jets and even some of these trijets, because I've seen a couple MD-11s, but never have I seen a DC-10, and I would love to change that. Maybe a KC-10, but those are gone now. I know Orbis, they've got one that's still flying around. It's actually in Tulsa right now, last I checked, which is pretty interesting. And yeah, I think that's really all that's left for flying DC-10s. There's not very many after FedEx got rid of theirs, and then any sort of private operator, they're not really that often, you know. They're not very common. Omega Tanker is another one. I remember seeing just a contrail of that DC-10. They actually had the 40 variant, which is a different engine variant with Pratt & Whitney engines as opposed to the General Electric CF6s that you'll see on a majority of the other DC-10s. And I know Northwest had those, and that's also another example I'd like to add. But ultimately, it's just going to be about finding the best deal on these DC-10s on whichever subject I find next, and that will be the next one to join the fleet. With that being said, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.